Hi everyone, in this video we're going to look at graphing cosine functions. Very similar to how we graph sine functions. We're going to find all those characteristics. Then we're going to do our graphs. Cosine graphs, instead of them starting on the midline, they start at the maximum or minimum value, then follow their pattern from there. But we're going to go ahead and get started with this first one. Y equals 3 cosine of negative 2x. So remember, first thing I identify A, B, and C. So A here is 3, B is negative 2. There is no value in parentheses with x, so x is 0. And there is no number in the back or in the direct front of the problem, so that means D is also 0. All right. So amplitude is the absolute value of A, so the absolute value of 3 is 3. So amplitude is how far your maximum and minimum are from the midline, basically, okay? The distance. Right, period. 2 pi divided by b, so the absolute value of b. So 2 pi divided by the absolute value of negative 2, which is just 2 pi divided by positive 2, which is just 1 pi, or pi. Vertical shift is 0. The graph did not move up or down. Phase shift is C over B, so 0 divided by negative 2 is 0, so the graph did not move to the left nor right. Midline is the line y equals D, so y equals 0. All right, your increment is the period divided by 4. So the period here was pi divided by 4. It's just pi over 4, or 1/4 pi. However you want to write it is fine. Okay. Maximum is y equals D plus the amplitude. So D is 0. The amplitude is 3. So 0 plus 3 is 3. Minimum, y equals D, subtract the amplitude. So 0 minus 3 is negative 3. All right, so now let's fill in the chart. So remember, in your chart, the first number for the x value is always the phase shift. So our phase shift here is 0. And we're going to add the increment. So we're going to add by 1/4 pi, or pi over 4 each time. Okay. So if I add by 1/4 pi, I get pi over 4. I add again by 1/4, that's pi over 2. I add again, that's 3 pi over 4. Lastly, I add again, that is going to be pi. All right. And then we got to get the pattern for cosine. So cosine's pattern is different from sine when we're graphing. So when you're graphing here, cosine, you always start with the maximum, because A is positive. Our A value here is positive, 3. So we're going to start with the max. Then we go to the midline. We go to the minimum. Back to the midline. Back to the max. And that's because A is positive, because A is greater than 0. That's our pattern. So our maximum is 3. The midline is at 0. The minimum is at negative 3. Midline 0. Maximum at 3. So I draw my midline. Going through 0. Then I go at 1, 2, 3, then negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And remember, our values that go on the x-axis are the numbers that are on the x column. So 0, pi over 2. I'm sorry, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. So when we graph, start at the max, so 3. Go down to the midline, which was 0. Pi over 2, we go down to negative 3. 3 pi over 4, we're back at the midline. Pi, we're back at the maximum. and then we just connect the dots. So we just did one phase here. All right, let's look at another one. We're going to do the same thing. So this one we have y equals -4 cosine of x minus pi. You see we have parentheses here, so we have to make sure we're paying attention. So a is -4, b is 1, c is positive pi, because remember it's the opposite of the sign is in parentheses here, and there's no number in the front or back being added or subtracted, so that is 0 for D. All right, amplitude is the absolute value of A, so the absolute value of -4 is 4. Period, 2 pi divided by the absolute value of B, so 2 pi divided by the absolute value of 1 is just 2 pi. Vertical shift, 0, so it didn't move up or down because D is 0. All right, the phase shift is C divided by B, so pi divided by 1 is just pi. Midline, y equals D, so y equals 0. Increment, period divided by 4, so 2 pi divided by 4 is just pi over 2. Maximum, y equals D, which is 0, plus the amplitude, which is 4. So the maximum is at 4. The minimum, y equals 0. Subtract the amplitude, so that equals -4. -4. Okay. So now here we go. Remember, phase shift is the first thing we're going to write in our column. So our phase shift is pi. All right. Then we add the increment. The increment is 1/2. So you have 1 pi, and you're going to add 1/2 each time to your values in the x column to get the rest of them. All right. So the next one is going to be 3 pi over 2. Then it's going to be 2 pi, 5 pi over 2, then 3 pi. And remember, we got that because we added 1/2 pi. We added a half each time, okay, to get the rest of the increments. All right. Now we have to get our pattern for our y value. So if you look this time, look at the value of A. A is negative. So when A was positive, we started with the maximum. When A is negative, we start with the minimum. So our pattern is min, midline, max, midline, min. So the minimum value here is -4. Midline is at 0. Max is at 4. Midline is 0. Minimum is -4. So now we just label our axes. So this time I know I got to go to 4. So -4, -3, -2, -1. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm at 0 here, and then I know I gotta go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points out. So I know I'm gonna start at pi. Then I have 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, 5 pi over 2, and 3 pi. The midline is at 0. And now we graph. At pi, the graph starts at -4. Then it goes to the midline at 3 pi over 2. Goes up to the maximum at 2 pi. Goes back down to the midline. At 3 pi, it goes to the minimum. And we connect the dots. And that's all we do for cosine, all right? So hopefully you find this video helpful with the introduction to graphing. Remember, you can still use the sheet I gave you with the patterns and how we find the other characteristics of the sine and cosine graphs, all right? Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you in class.